to our ocean studio here as part of the YAHOWAH blog. I hope that there's still a beautiful rainbow behind me. We'll see if our remote camera can pick it up as we begin this program on the man that is most responsible for making that rainbow come to fruition for YAHOWAH. You see, the rainbow was presented by YAHOWAH as the sign of the covenant. If you recall, in his discussions with us about a man named Noah, who means guide, he ended the cruise on the floodwaters with this rainbow as the sign of the covenant. And what's so beautiful about the story of Noah is that he was unique among the people living at the time. He lived between Lake Van and the Black Sea. And the area was in the immediate proximity to where Eden had been and where Adam and Chawah were escorted out of the garden. And they were unique among humans at the time. There were thousands upon thousands of Homo sapiens living around the garden at that time, which is why it was walled. But the thing that made Adam unique and therefore Chawah was the existence of a nasama, a conscience. It is the thing that causes humans to be different than other animals, and that we have the capacity to exercise good judgment. We can think, we can be moral. We can filter through information and deduce intelligent and reasoned decisions. It is the thing which means that no matter how many processors they throw at AI, a single wise man will always outthink the computers when it comes to the things that matter most. And it is via our conscience that we can do this. So Noah and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives, 8 all total, were unique in that they had distanced themselves from the Nephilim. The Nephilim were the reason that God wanted to not only flood that region, but also was weary that he'd even conceived mankind. You see, Nephal, upon which Nephilim is the plural, speaks of fallen. And it is insightful because it relates to what happened in the garden when YAHOWAH made the decision to cause the fall of man, because the first man didn't pass muster. He just didn't measure up. God wanted him to do things that he was unwilling to do. He was not a good listener. He was not particularly observant as to what was happening around him, meaning that he was no fun to spend time with. He was not responsive to what God had to say, and he was a bit of a dependent as opposed to being one who's engaged, contributing to the relationship, making a difference, making things better. He didn't much like work. And so God recognized that Adam was never going to be interesting, never was going to grow up, never was going to develop any character, and would never have an opportunity to demonstrate that he was capable of falling and getting back up, showing that he could be trusted. And so it was YAHOWAH who caused the fall of man for these reasons, recognizing that the only chance that humanity had to earn God's trust so that he could take us off of this planet and show us the rest of the universe, which is his desire, was for us to be out of the coddled confines of Eden. And so it just did not go well. The next 1,000 years or so was brutal. God explained that the Nephilim, which does not mean giants, it means the fallen, were Hamas. Yeah, the name of the terrorist group, Hamas. They were violent terrorists. They were ruthless. They were religious. They were had degraded in a very short time to being horrible. And many of these people lived in and around the Black Sea, which was fresh water at the time, about 500 feet shallower than it is today. And So God despaired and said, I've given mankind 2 opportunities now. This is not working out. I wish I hadn't even created humankind. But he said, I'm going to give it one shot here. I'm going to reboot the system and see if they will eventually be able to do better. And God's actual testimony is that there will be a upwelling of deep seawater that would cause this regional flood throughout this area. And we now find that the Burkle impact crater off not far from the mouth of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, that it caused a 500-foot tsunami to race up through this region through enough moisture up into the air to create this long 40-day deluge that followed. And what it did is at that time, and we have proof of this, it buried the communities around the Dead Sea, which is the first human civilizations, bad as they may have been, buried them under 500 feet of water and turned a freshwater lake into one that was saltwater, and then ran out the Bosphorus Strait. The thing that is so amazing about the story is not only once you know how God said it would be initiated with the deep upwelling of seawater, and you recognize that the proof is ubiquitous that that's what happened in this area right at that time, and that the story of God causing the fall of man in the garden, and then these people known as Nephilim. You learn a lot about what God doesn't like and what he's trying to achieve. And Noach plays such an important role in all of this, because what Noach was noted for doing was listening to Yahweh and then doing as God had asked. Really a simple equation, isn't it? He did what Adam did not do. He listened to God and then engaged, doing as God had asked. And so with Noach, God was able to prove that it was possible. And therefore, he put Noach in a position to save his family if he was willing to work at it, to build that ark, to save the animals that he dearly loved in that region, and then tell us that, well, these 8 people convey a story that should resonate with you so that you know what it is that I'm seeking. So if you want to get off this planet and go explore the universe with Yahweh, you know what you need to do. Listen and then engage. So it's a really important story. And the fact that there were 8 of them, what that is telling us is that with the 2 being Noach and his wife, and then the others making a total of 8, that God would have 2 people that would be part of his story that would marshal in this new opportunity for the covenant family to thrive, which is the symbol of the covenant, that rainbow. And that as a result of God doing that, at the end of the 7th epoch of man, apart from the garden, which will begin in year 2033 with your 6,000 Yah and go to your 7,000 Yah, that during that period, we're going to have the opportunity to calibrate this mortal remnant of Israel who are going to be spared by Yahweh on Teruah, September 23rd and 24th of 2033, so that they can witness Yahweh's return with his beloved son Dowd on Kippurim, the 2nd of October of 2033. And then we are allowed back into the garden with Yah terraforming the entire earth so that the conditions are replicated that were experienced in Gan Eden. And as that occurs, and we have this opportunity to enable people to pass muster, to listen to God, to be observant, to be responsive, to act and engage, to make a contribution, and then demonstrate that if they make a mistake, they're willing to correct it and move on from there. Fall and then stand up again. We'll have 1,000 years to get them right so that God can take these individuals off this planet and go explore the vastness of the universe together. And that is what that rainbow represents. And it's appropriate for it to be of light because it breaks light into 7 fundamental colors of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And and showing the variations of life and light in those 7 colors, we see this menorah that is spinning over my shoulder here, where we took those 7 lights and we reflected them in the same colors of the rainbow, because they not only represent the colors of light, which is what Yahweh is transferring us into, transforming our physical body so that we become energy and light enveloping our souls during the process of the 7 Moed Mikre, represented by each of the lights on that candelabra over my shoulder, the symbol of Yahweh. And they are Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, which Dowd fulfilled in 33 CE. Shabuah, Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah. So this is God's story, and it is all emblazoned in the colors of that rainbow, if you know how to view it. So I thought I would share that with you as we continue. These are amazing times. I had a long conversation with my youngest son today, and he is in his late 30s now, and is thinking, how just desperate times have become, and that his dad was right when he told him how rapidly things were going to decay and how little time we humans had left to get our relationship right with God. And he now realizes that all of these things that were foretold were true. And you now have very little time. We are 137 days, a little less than that at this moment, from entering the time of Israel's troubles, which is going to be devastating for the entire world. And I'm here to tell you emphatically, not only is Trump going to betray Israel and force a Fakistanian state, a state of Islamic terror on Israel, all to postpone the ultimate decline and demise of the petrodollar, a matter of a few more months is what he will get for sacrificing Israel for the sake of the U.S. deficit. The moves that are being made, particularly now, his not only invasion of Venezuela and stealing the country's resources, when China was the largest investor in Venezuela and was helping them develop their oil extraction technology and transportation, as well as silver and other rare earth extraction and distribution, so they could actually survive under the pressure of U.S. sanctions, for the U.S. to go in and steal it and also kidnap one of the most important of all Chinese diplomats in the process, and steal the silver and steal the silver mines, and now lay claim to the oil, has put China in a position where China must respond. You see, China has trillions of dollars invested in its Road and Belt Initiative. And this Belt and Road Initiative is such that China has made huge investments in countries around the world. And China's investments are of a very different nature than America's. Rather than threatening countries and telling them that they must do business in the dollar and they must obey our edicts, and if they don't, we'll replace the government and we'll threaten them, we'll sanction them. I mean, the U.S. has been belligerent, which has paved the way for China to form so many business deals around the world. And I'm not pretending that China is not malevolent. I'm just telling you that the way they do business is perfectly sensible, and it is as follows: they will go into a country that doesn't have the overall economic capability to develop its natural resources or its harbors or its roads or its railroads or other types of infrastructure like power generation. And it will cut a deal with that country. And the deal is pretty much always the same, which is that if you pay the very low interest loan back for China developing your infrastructure, and particularly infrastructure, like, again, dams, power generation, roads, harbors, and the like, mines, and oil extraction facilities and distribution, refinery, and these sorts of things, that if you pay over, the course of the loan, your loan back with your percentage of the proceeds of these developments, then they're yours to keep. And you'll work with China and other countries in enjoying the benefits. If you don't pay your loan back, then China simply gets title to whatever it was that China built in your country. Still in your country, you can still use it, but China has sway over its ultimate benefits. So it's a perfectly fair deal. You still have the harbor that functions, but China owns that harbor at that point. And China has done this throughout the world, all to unite the world around an alternative to the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency and the belligerence of the United States. And so when the United States stole Venezuela, where China was the largest investor, some $70 billion in their mining industry and oil extraction industry and other infrastructures within Venezuela, and then kidnapped a lead Venezuelan diplomat. China was in a position where they either roll over and play dead, which is to tell everyone that is part of that Belt and Road Initiative that you do a deal with China, and if the United States comes in and is belligerent and kidnaps your leaders and steals your country, then you get nothing. And you're inviting the United States to attack you under those circumstances. So all of that investment is for naught. And there are not many leaders that are going to make that kind of deal. And so China is in a position where they must stand up for Venezuela. And they must stand up for what's right. And if they don't, they lose everything that they have invested in. And so China, quite frankly, has told the United States that you either return Maduro, you end your blockade, you remove your troops, you return the country back to the Venezuelans, and you end the U.S. sanctions, or the consequences to the United States will be grievous, because this is a grievous attack on China. And while China is in a position now where I believe that a kinetic war between China and the U.S., kinetic war, aircraft carrier, fighting aircraft carrier, submarine to submarine, fighter to fighter, bomber to bomber, missile to missile, interceptor to by comparison between the nations, artillery, troops, all of that sort of thing. Well, I think that today, by its manufacturing prowess and its most recent technological advancements and its access to rare earths and that sort of thing, that a kinetic war between the U.S. and China, if it were to exist for any length of time, would be won by China. Because, heck, if the United States loses an aircraft carrier, it'll be 15 years before they can replace it. If that aircraft carrier is damaged, it'd be 10 years before it can come back to sea. And China outproduces the U.S. 350 to 1 on large ships. 350 to 1, not 3 times more. I mean, not even, 30% more, not 3 times more, by 350 times more. Not 350% more, 350 times more tonnage, and is superior to the United States in the manufacturing of virtually everything. And so in a prolonged war, a war of attrition, China wins hands down. And in a war of, if it were to go nuclear, both countries lose, so there's no point in it. So China is in a position, I think it has right now an $8 trillion nest egg to deploy against the United States in assets and currencies and valuable commodities other than the dollar. It has reduced its dollar holdings substantially. Was in the process this year of completely eliminating all dollar holdings and all U.S. asset in the United States, liquidating everything in the United States over the next 10 months was the edict. But with their gold reserves now, silver reserves now, which are extraordinary, and investments in other countries and commodities, China is in a position where it can bankrupt the U.S. and survive it. China also has a full year's supply of food beyond its own internal production. It has a full year's supply of virtually every commodity, including a fuel reserve of a full year beyond its own production and its allegiances with nearby countries like Iran and Russia. So China is in a position where they can dump their remaining treasury bills and put the United States into default. They are in a position where they can use cyber warfare to take down America's power grids and satellites. They're in a position to control access to the raw materials that are necessary for an economy to function, starving the U.S. economy. They are in a position where the computers and electronic devices and telephones and all these manner of things that are now made in China will just be embargoed from the U.S. And so that's the thing that Trump didn't think through when he and those around him establishing the Fourth Reich decided to be like Hitler and attack Venezuela. That's what has happened. And this is what's going to be the consequence. Within a matter of years, the U.S. will be bankrupt. And there is no avoiding it. And all we have done is exacerbate the problem. And now you've got Trump on the cusp of eliminating NATO, which I would be fine if we weren't part of NATO anymore. Well, not we, but the U.S. We're not part of NATO anymore. But he has threatened to take over Greenland. There's only 57,000 people on Greenland. I've been saying it's incredibly sparse. I mean, I don't know if they have 10 trees on the island. It's the largest island in the world, and I don't know if they have 10 trees on the island. It's really sparse. But the rocky outcroppings in the mountains are gorgeous, and the biggest city is 20,000 people. We've got more people on this little island here in the middle of the Caribbean Sea than they have in their largest city. And it's beautifully picturesque with all the colorful little houses. They have 20 some odd settlements around this country, which is the least densely populated place on earth. And so Trump wants it because he's back into the battleship era that large presence, I guess, means something, and thinks that you are somehow impervious to Russian missiles if you have Greenland as a defense. But Canada is a bigger territory to go over, and the Canadians just told the U.S. to go to hell when it relates to integrating the Arctic part of Canada into NATO and the United States defense capability. Canada said, no, we're just not going to turn that over to you. We're not going to integrate it with you. And so you don't really gain much by picking up Greenland. And I'm here to tell you that the submarines don't need to operate up there. The most lethal of the Russian submarines now carry Poseidon nuclear torpedoes that travel at incredible underground speeds, and they create a nuclear tsunami that takes out any city near the coast. And so having Greenland doesn't do anything other than tell the world that you're belligerent. And that's where we are. So I think it's important that you have an appreciation of where we are at this time, that the fact that the time of troubles begins in very, very short order, and that there's only one way off this planet alive, and that's to form a relationship with Yahweh. And he is the one who inspired the words we're considering here now as part of the 89th Psalm. It is the Song of Dowd. It is Yahweh singing his son's praises. Now, speaking of him, he says, his offspring and that which he sows. Zerahu, his descendants, his posterity, his family, and his seed, and that which he propagates, will exist and endure forever. The reason that just alone is so important is that Christians, because of the lies of Paul, would have their faithful believe that Paul was right when he said that the entire Torah and the entire experience of Israel could be completely neglected because seed was singular, as if this was a case that a single person was going to be a beneficiary of Dowd. It was a ludicrous idea, but nonetheless, that was Paul's plan, is that because the seed of Abraham was going to receive blessings from God, that you could bypass Israel and bypass the Torah and go directly to his mythical misnomer, Jesus, the man God. But the problem, of course, is that that's not what God said. And second, here we now have another promise regarding seed. So you can't skip from Abraham past the Jews to Mr. Christ, when a fellow who lived 1,000 years before the myth of Mr. Christ was conceived is also the beneficiary of the same statement where it says his offspring and that which he sows will exist and endure forever. That's absolute proof that Paul lied. If you want to be informed and rational, he lied. If you want to believe, then that's your problem. You have to believe that which is untrue. So it's Dowd's offspring, and that which he sows, which will exist and endure forever. That being the case, guess what? There can't be any Jesus. And his place of honor, his dignity and authority, as well as his adornment, his throne, his seat of sovereign leadership, and his powers from Keshe, will be as brilliant as the sun before me. Neged Ani, my conspicuous counterpart. Mizmowr 89:36. Wow. I mean, just wow. You have any idea how powerful that is? So, God is saying of this one man that he has called his beloved son. He has said, I'm his father, he's my son. He has called this man his chosen one. He has specifically said on 3 occasions already that the man that I'm talking about, his name is Dowd. That's the actual name of the person known today as David. He says that he personally mashyach-ed him, anointed him the Messiah. He says that his throne and his position of honor were going to endure forever and be measured as time is measured in the spiritual domain of the heavens, which is as light, which means eternally. He said of Dowd that he is not only the exemplar of the covenant, but that the covenant's benefits are literally delivered by what Dowd achieved, making him our Savior. He said that Dowd is the Zeroah, the Passover lamb. All in this testimony. And now he's saying that the verbal root of Zeroah, which is sowing seeds and offspring, having a prosperous and productive harvest, Zerah. He is saying that it's Dowd's offspring. that which he sows, that are going to exist and endure forever. Well, Dowd did a lot of things. Farming is not one of them. He was a great shepherd. He was a tremendous warrior. He was the greatest of kings. He was a superlative songwriter. He was a great lover as well. But farmer, not so much. So guess what? God's not talking about sowing actual seeds. No, Dowd is talking about the results of what he has done. And when you consider what did Dowd do that would result in having offspring, if your mind is open, if you're paying attention to the Torah, you know, Pesach Matzah Bakurim. Pesach opened the doorway to life, will endure and exist forever. That only happens when somebody opens the doorway to life. Pesach is the doorway to life. I'm hearing the roar of a very loud plane behind me. It's exceedingly annoying, not because of the noise, but because these loud airplanes are typically U.S. spook planes and military planes. The spooks that went in and kidnapped Maduro and were spies in Venezuela, landed their gaggle of blacked out large aircraft here on Croy prior to invading Venezuela. And they don't normally fly during the day. These things mostly like to sneak out under the dark of night. So that's what we're listening in the background. Man kills, God creates life. And so let's think about it. It says that his offspring and that which he sows will exist and endure forever. The doorway to forever is Passover. Now, I understand that religious Jews don't know that. They celebrate Passover as the escape from Egypt. It's not true. Nobody left Egypt on Passover. Nobody. They had a nice meal, went to bed that night, and the firstborn sons of everyone, including the Pharaoh, died that night. You see, Passover is the doorway to life. It's not the exit plan. The exit, where you separate from religious and political corruption, occurs on matzah. So they become immortal and exist forever because Dowd opened the door to life on Passover by fulfilling it. He was the one who in 33 CE was crucified by the Romans. He wrote extensively about it in the 22nd and 88th Mizmowr, Psalms. You ought to read it. He speaks specifically of Roman-style crucifixion. The following day, it was Dowd's nephesh soul that carried the guilt of every covenant member into Sheol, this black hole that is equated with hell, so that we would be innocent before God, not guilty. That is how we endure. That's how we exist in God's presence, because we look ideal. We look innocent before him. All he sees is the good in us because all the bad has been taken away. But what does that lead to? Firstborn children, descendants, posterity. Bakurim goes Pesach, doorway to life, matzah, removal of guilt. Bakurim, firstborn children, descendants, posterity, family. This is his offspring, and that which he sows delivered through Bakurim, when Dowd's nephesh soul was released from Sheol and returned to his father in Shamayim, heaven. Get the picture? God's a very, very effective storyteller, but you got to know who the players are and what they're talking about if you want to capitalize. So now God is saying of a man whose first life ended 4 years before this was written. This was written in year 3000 Yah, 968 BCE. That's when the cornerstone of the home for Yahweh's name, known as the first temple, was laid. And that is the moment that this song was authored by God. And in it, of the son whose mortality had ended 4 years earlier, he's saying that his place of honor, dignity, and authority, as well as his adornment, his throne, his sovereign leadership, would be like the sun, as brilliant as the sun before him, as a conspicuous counterpart. Now, the reason for this is the first part of what we just read tells us that David, would have a second life. And in that life, he's going to open the door to life for the rest of us, perfect us so that we can exist and endure in God's presence, and so that he will deliver posterity on Makudim. So in that second of 3 lives in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, he fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Makudim, enabling the statement that preceded this. But now for him to return as brilliant as the sun before me, with his position of authority as a conspicuous counterpart in Yahweh's presence, 2 things have to happen, right? Yahweh's got to return for us to see that, or it's meaningless to us. You know, another sun in a universe of 2 trillion galaxies with hundreds of billions of stars per galaxy is pretty meaningless. It wouldn't even be worth saying. But for God to say it to us on this planet means that Yahweh is returning, and indeed he is, on Yom Kippurim in year 6000 Yah, 2000 years, 40 Yobel, after Dod's fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Makudim. Dod and Yahweh are returning together to fulfill this promise. And when that happens, it is going to be a case where Dod's position as a conspicuous counterpart in Yahweh's presence is going to be as brilliant as the sun. Yahweh is equating Dod's authority, Dod's position relative to our planet and life on it, with the sun. Now, if you want to understand this, what must you do? Well, listen to my suggestion. You go back to the first book of the Torah and open the first chapter. And keeping in mind that Dod fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Makudim, which enabled the first part of this statement, in year 4000 Yah, 33 CE. You might want to read what Yahweh said happened at that time. What did he say? He didn't say that he created the sun, but he spoke. In fact, he didn't even use the word for sun, which is Shemesh. What he said is that there would be, on this 4th day, 2 luminaries, both great. The greater of the 2 luminaries would rule over this time of brightness of day, and the lesser of the luminaries would reflect the sun's light during the time of darkness. And that collectively they would serve as signs of the Moedim, of these restoring witnesses of Pesach, Matzah, Makudim, Shavuot, Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah. And so there would be the greater luminary whose brilliance is reflected by the lesser luminary, pursuant to explaining and fulfilling these Moedim, these 7 meetings that I have been sharing with you. Pesach, Matzah, Makudim, Dod, fulfilled, 33 CE, Shavuot, Teruah, my responsibility in, well, over the next 8 years, and then Dod's return with Yahweh in 2033, year 6000 Yah. That is what's being conveyed here. And it is equating Dod, whom this whole song has been about, to the sun that is the greater luminary of the 4th day of creation. And it says that Dowd is actually Yahweh's counterpart. That's why earlier in this psalm, we heard God ascribe a title and condition to Dowd that is essentially unimaginable from a human perspective. And that is that Yahweh called Dowd Elyon. So God, El, called his beloved son, Dowd, El-Eon. El is God. On, after a word like Shabbaton, means all things pertaining to the subject. So all things pertaining to God would be El-On. But it's El-Eon with the Yod in the middle of that. The Yod is a hand. It speaks of influence. So it's everything pertaining to the influence of God. Elyon, God's counterpart. And now he's saying that his seat of honor will be as brilliant as the sun. Do you know what Dowd's seat of honor looks like? Are you familiar with it? Because I can tell you exactly what it looks like. It's comprised of gold. You might have surmised that. It has 2 cherubim on it. If this was the 2 cherubim both have wings outstretched like they would be for your hand rest on a chair, arms of the chair, the 2 wings that come out this way. Their bodies of the cherub and the cherubim are in the 2 corners. And then they have wings that go behind that are the backrest for this throne. So what is gold that has 2 cherubim, winged spiritual beings on it, that would be referred to as a seat and be exceedingly important, particularly on the day that Dowd is returning, and that might somehow tie into this rainbow that we talked about and showed a picture of at the beginning of this program. It's called the Kipporeth, based upon the same verb as Yom Kippurim. Kippurim is the plural of Kippur, which means to reconcile. The day of reconciliations is when Dowd and Yahweh are returning. That is when you're going to witness this. And when that occurs, you should look to the Torah, because the Torah is quite explicit. It says that on this day, that the high priest must go in to the most important place, the most set apart place within the tabernacle, and anoint the Kipporeth, the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. First for himself with the blood of a bull, sprinkle 7 times your finger, and then the blood of a goat. In that case, it will be Elia. You're listening to the bull talk to you. He is Yada. And this is what's going to happen. And so the Ark of the Covenant is the mercy seat. It is the Kipporeth. It is what is going to be as brilliant as the sun. It is why it's going to be brilliant, because it's going to reflect the sun's light, and the sun is the greater luminary. And it's going to enable the covenant promises. Because this very psalm, that's what Yahweh said, that his son is the reason that the covenant is possible. He enabled the benefits of the covenant, which are eternal life, our souls being rid of all guilt, our adoption into God's covenant family, our enrichment and empowerment at that time. Those are the 5 benefits of the covenant. Dowd is delivering all of them. And the seat, his throne, his position of influence is on the very Ark of the Covenant, which is now similar to what Noah did as an example and built for life and to avoid the storms and to show the sign of the covenant by listening to Yahweh and doing what he said all those many years ago. The Ark of the Covenant is his throne. And he's going to sprinkle the blood of a bull who's going to be sacrificed on Teruah as the Adam of Perah. And the blood of the goat is that of Eliah, who will have served as the master of ceremonies for the greatest show on earth that takes place as Yahweh transforms the earth back into the conditions of Eden and supervises all of the festivities associated with the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah on Teruah, the incineration of all religious and political trash, and then the terraforming of the earth back to the conditions experienced in Eden. So we have a marvelous, protective, and a sheltered place, ideal for life over the next 1,000 years, over which time Dowd will reign as our king. So doesn't this also mean that Dowd has a third life? And there is somebody else that must have a third life because of what follows. When God introduced the story of the greater and lesser luminaries in the first chapter of Bereshith, Genesis, he equated the two together. The inference was that the moon reflects the sun's light. So what is it that is following this reference to being as brilliant as the sun? It says that he is similar to the moon. And it's the moon who is also established forevermore, while serving as an enduring and reliable, truthful and dependable witness in the universe, in space-time, and for all things joyful thereafter. Wow. I mean, God's testimony is just alive with meaning, with relevance for our very moment, with hope, with brilliance, and tremendous insights. So not only is Dowd returning with his seat of honor, which is the Kaporeth, the very mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, which he is going to anoint with the blood of this bull, who is the lesser luminary, the moon, his herald, and with the goat that's Eliah, who has been the returning Elijah to serve as the other witness and the master of ceremonies throughout this glorious event. And understand that what God said specifically in 2 Samuel 6 is that Obed-Edom, which is the man from Edom in Isaiah, is going to save many at this time. He's going to be covered in blood because he is the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah. And that they are going to work together to bring this into fruition. And when Yahweh explained that to Dowd, Dowd put on the breastplate of the high priest as the Ark of the Covenant was proceeding to its place on the Temple Mount under the tent of the restoring witness. Dowd is going to be the one who anoints the Ark of the Covenant upon his return. That's why he wore that breastplate of the Ark of the Covenant when the Ark of the Covenant was being moved into its proper place on the Temple Mount under the tent of the restoring witness during Dowd's first of 3 lives. This is going to be replicated when Obed-Edom, the man from Edom, relocates the ark again. It is in Jerusalem. Yahweh's going to give him access to it. He's going to put it back in its proper place. It's going to be available for Dowd when he returns, and it'll be his blood that is sprinkled on it. These are the kind of connections that are so essential to make. And on that day when Dowd was celebrating the return of the Ark of the Covenant and positioned in his proper place, how was he attired? Naked. Why was he attired naked? Because that was the dress code in Eden, was it not? Where are we going back when Dowd returns on Sukkah? To Eden. Every nuance of his story fits together and shares this same brilliance picture. And so now we find that similar to the moon, he is established. The moon is related to the sun, and that the moon reflects the sun's light, just like the lesser luminary reflects the light of the sun as signs of the Moedim, these restoring witnesses. And it's those two individuals, the greater and lesser luminary, who are tasked as mortal men to fulfill those important events. In fact, they're the only two people that take an active role in fulfilling them. Dowd came back in his second of third lives by his own choice to have his Bashar body crucified on Passover, to have his Nephesh soul carry our guilt into Sheol on Matzah, and to celebrate firstborn children on Bikurim. And no one would know about this if it wasn't for the lesser luminary serving as the moon to reflect the sun's light. Shows you the interrelationship between us. And this enables us to participate in the Shabuah harvest, which is upcoming. And then the Teruah gleaning, followed by the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah, all of which fall under the purview and responsibility of this moon, this lesser luminary, Dowd's herald in God's story. Dowd and Yada. They're like this. And it's the same throughout. They are the tree of lives and the tree of knowledge in the garden. They are the ram and the bull. So similar to the moon, he's established. That means that our relationship together is forever. We will be best buds, king and herald, brothers, forever. My job will be to eternally reflect Dowd's brilliance. And no one has ever done it. I don't know, I can pat myself on the back. No one's ever done it as well as I've done it. No, not even close. I mean, I've written 25,000 pages, more than all of the other prophets combined by tenfold, to celebrate the greatest discovery in human history, which is that Dowd, David, is the one in his second of three lives fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, becoming our Savior, and that Dowd is the Messiah. He is the returning King. He is the very Son of God. He is the chosen one. He is the shepherd. He is the means to enable the benefits of the covenant. And he is the Son as the greater luminary in the first chapter of Bereshith Genesis in the Torah. He's the tree of lives in the garden. He's God's beloved Son. He's all of those things. And the first person not only to discern that, but to prove it, to explain Dowd's motivation for doing so, to explain how Dowd came to the understanding that he should volunteer, to show why Yahweh came to the conclusion that it was right for Dowd and for him and for his people and for all people on this earth for Dowd to do as he did. And yet his people promoted two God-forsaken myths to deprive everyone of what Dowd accomplished. First with Jesus Christ, who never existed. Paul created him in 52 CE. You heard that correctly. Jesus Christ never existed. He's a goddamn lie. No one named Jesus lived in first century Judea. There was no Christ. It's a Greek title based upon the concept of drugs. No prophecy related to a Jesus. All of the prophecies of somebody arriving to do something extraordinary all have Dowd's name in them, as does this one. It's Dowd. He was the one who was crucified by his own explanation. When you look at the prophecy in Daniel, it talks about an arriving mashyach, to be cut off, but not for himself. Dowd is the one who's giving the prophecy. He is Gabriel, God's most capable and courageous man. He's speaking of himself. That realization is the single greatest discovery in human history, and it is the lesser luminary reflecting the greater luminary's brilliance, just as the moon reflects the sun's light, particularly in this time of great darkness. It is the single greatest gift I can give, or God can give to anyone, this recognition of what Dowd did. And it's not just stolen by the lie of Jesus Christ. And listen, you want to have a conniption fit and pretend that your Jesus Christ is God. Have your head examined. Put it in the toilet and flush it. I mean, that's the level of your stupidity. God is not a man. A God that can create a universe of 2 trillion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars, each with thousands of planets, and conceive life, can't be smaller than the universe that he created. He has to be at least one dimension beyond the universe that he created, which is likely 6 dimensions, of which we perceive 3.5. All of God won't fit into the entire universe, much less into one galaxy, much less into one solar system, much less onto one planet, much less into one continent or country, much less into one ethnicity, much less into one person. It is absurd. God is not a man. And if I may go one step further, men cannot kill God. God cannot die. The whole lie of Jesus is so utterly absurd. And this idea of a resurrection, a bodily resurrection, is asinine. It's counterproductive. The whole thing God is trying to offer you is to free you from these. When you get to the point where you can be trusted by God, and God can take you off with him to go off and explore the vastness of this universe, you have to have your soul enveloped in light energy, which means you have to get rid of these bodies, which are just anchors keeping you on this planet. It's why Elon Musk's dream of having 1 million people live on Mars by 2050 is nothing but a fairy tale, nothing but hype, stupidity. No one's going to live on Mars. Wholly toxic, and the distances are too great. It's what God's offering. He used 2 sources of light, one during the day, one during the night, to demonstrate this to you so that you could get an appreciation of why the throne of Dowd, which is the Kaporet, the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant, is going to be as brilliant as the sun in his presence. And while he is so similar to the moon, that he will be established, kun, appointed, prepared, trusted, and set in place forever, eternally. When I first read this, and I did not understand the importance of greater and lesser luminary in the first chapter of the Torah, before I understood that Dowd had fulfilled Pesach, Mas, and Bakurim, and therefore earned the title of sign of the Moedim by having done so, and that the purpose of the lesser luminary was to reflect the sun's brilliance, I thought that God was talking about the moon existing forever, and that's not possible. This entire universe that we can see bits and pieces of at night is going to die of entropy. Nothing in it's going to exist forever. Our sun won't exist forever. Our planet will not exist forever. The moon won't exist forever. But when it says that this moon is similar to the brilliance of Dowd's position of leadership, and that's going to exist forever, then we have a relationship. Now we understand the testimony in Bereshith, Genesis 1, of the relationship of the greater and lesser luminaries serving as signs of the Moedim. They're fulfilling them to give you life forevermore. And what is he doing? He's YAHOWAH. He's serving forevermore. This role that God has asked me to play. I didn't volunteer for this. I didn't negotiate for it. I didn't ask for it. I'm being compensated Zippo for it, although it does have the greatest retirement package in the history of the universe. Part of it's, and you get to work with the nicest people in the universe, so it's got some really nice perks, and it's really enlightening, and it's uplifting, and it's fun. It's the greatest job ever, and working is something I enjoy and YAHOWAH loves. So it's a really cool job. But you're serving forevermore as an enduring and reliable, truthful and dependable Amon, an easily verified, a confident, trustworthy, loyal witness. And it was written here in the Niphal participle. Oh, of course it was written in the Niphal participle. What was God thinking if he wouldn't have written it in the Niphal participle? And all of you out there saying, what in the hell is a Niphal participle? Rich back there is waving his hand. I've been doing this so long, but I actually know what a Niphal participle is and celebrate. When I see a Niphal participle, I'm all in. What Niphal means that the subject of this verb, which is to be truthful and dependable, reliable and verifiable, is not only carrying out the intent of the verb, but he's also enduring the effect of the verb. So this is fully engaged. It means that the role that God has asked me to play, I am serving you as a truthful and dependable witness. And I'm benefiting because I'm receiving what would be considered the benefits of being a truthful and reliable witness, which is to be appreciated by God and by the covenant family for doing this very thing, being verifiable, being confident, being trustworthy. And then, of course, he is an ed. Now, the participle is a verbal noun. That means that this is an entity that is doing this. So that Amon becomes a title. You know, the religious, whether they be Muslims or Jews or Christians, in their prayers and in somebody's name, Hashem's name or Jesus's name or in Allah's name, Amen. Amen is a corruption of Amon. Amon is the verb. It means to be truthful, to be honest, to be reliable, to be verifiable, to be confident. And Amen is the name of an Egyptian god. You've heard of Tutankhamen and a variety of different pharaohs that were named after Amen, the god of ancient Egypt. So you don't want to end a prayer in God's name, Amen, because now you're praying in the name of an Egyptian god. But Amon is a powerful term. And by writing it in the participle, what God is saying is that the individual who is can be compared to the moon in the presence of Dowd returning with his authority as brilliant as the sun, now bears the title Amon. It serves as an actionable noun. Therefore, it is a descriptive title. So the ed witness is Amon. You say, he's Amon. He's loyal. He's confident. He's reliable. He's dependable. And his role is to serve as an ed. That is a restoring witness, providing eternal testimony. Isn't that marvelous? Oh, by the way, where? Where is this being that reflects the sun's light, that is consistent with the sun's authority, can be counted alongside the sun's authority in God's presence, who is Amon, trustworthy, as a witness? Where is he going to endure forever? In the universe, space-time, everywhere. For 1,000 years after Dowd's return on Kippurim and our re-entry into Eden on Sukkah, this is a day that Dowd and I worked together. As I shared, Dowd fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bekodim. His Bashar body, his disposable Bashar body, served as the ram, the Passover lamb on Passover in the doorway to life. His Nefesh soul carried our guilt into Sheol on Matzah to rid us of any guilt, making us look innocent in God's eyes. He returned to the Father to celebrate Bekodim as Yah's Bakor, firstborn son, enabling firstborn children. Then it is the lesser luminary's responsibility, this restoring witness's responsibility, to fulfill the Shabuah harvest, which is upcoming, and then the Teruah gleaning, followed by he is the Adamah Parah, the sacrifice on Teruah. And that enables a restored mortal remnant of Yisrael and some Goyim to be present for Yahweh's return with Dowd, when you're going to witness Dowd's authority being as brilliant as the sun in God's presence. And Yahweh's returning with him. 5 days thereafter, we enter Sukkah. And on Sukkah, it is Dowd and I working together again, serving as the signs of the Moedim, because he is the tree of lives, I am the tree of knowledge, and we collaborate to equip this mortal remnant of Yisrael with the right approach to Yahweh and life to earn God's trust, so that they too can join us traveling through the universe. And God says, for all of this, pause now and contemplate what you have just heard. Mizmowr, lyrics to sing, Psalm 89:37. If this were the end of the psalm, at the conclusion of God's tribute song to his beloved son, it would already be the most important piece of literature ever written. A very constitution of our lives, an owner's manual, if you will, an operator's manual on how to get the most out of life. Just a quick interruption here. There has been a really nasty bug that has permeated this island. One of my closest friends, he showed up today. He works with us 4 days a week. An artist friend. He's really a talented fellow. And he has been waylaid with it for 2 weeks now. And it starts with a sinus infection, which I'm subject to, and then a scratchy throat, which you probably heard me cough over these last 2 weeks, more so than normal. And then it just renders you too weak to be productive for 2 to 3 weeks. And so I'm trying to avoid mine progressing to what his did. So for a while, we're just going to do the one program a week, and I'm going to get lots and lots of rest and drink lots of fluids to try to minimize the likelihood that it waylays me at this time. So what God has just articulated by way of the relationship between Yada and Dowd, between the sun and the moon symbolically, the greater and lesser luminaries from God's perspective, the tree of lives and the tree of knowledge, the ram and the bull, the king and Obed-Edom. All of this is going to be accomplished. It's going to take root, it's going to grow, it's going to yield an eternal harvest. Our king will endure, he will return. His offspring, the children of the covenant, will thrive. And he will never serve alone. He will always have his herald. The Son's dignity, his authority, as well as his symbols of majesty, will be as brilliant as the sun in his Father's presence, adorned in the vestiges of his calling. Dowd will become Yahweh's most conspicuous counterpart. I said something on our vlog on the vlog last Sunday that while I have been amazingly impressed with the renditions of Dowd and all of our branding and outreach material that have been produced by my wife and her team of exceedingly artistic and creative individuals, that there was one that was not as Dowdian as I wanted it to be. And I guess it was a collaborative effort between my wife and a really remarkable young man that is super devoted to helping us convey this message, particularly on Facebook, where he is really active. And he has one of the great life stories of having fallen and gotten back up. But my understanding is he was one that created that image. And I am, by design, exceedingly judgmental. And I am also, by design, very vocal. God made me this way for this purpose. And I said, of all the things that we've done, I think we could make that Dowd a bit more regal. And the reason I said that is because of statements like this. He's returning, and he's as brilliant as the sun. He is Elion in God's presence. He is the greater luminary. I want my king to appear as God's conspicuous counterpart. And my wife, she is the most talented fashion designer I have ever met. Now, you wouldn't know it by the way that I dress, but we're pretty casual around here. But she is really stylish. And so I just wanted Dowd to be as God sees him, as I see him, as we see him. Now, speaking of the two, just speaking of God's metaphor, the moon, while 400 times smaller than the sun, is 400 times closer to the earth. And that's 400 times smaller in diameter, much smaller than the sun than that, but just in diameter. And the moon, comprised of the essence of the earth. Actually, our moon was created because of a very large planet, smaller, of course, than the earth, but probably in the size of Mars. 4.5 billion years ago, hit Earth at just the proper speed and just the proper angle to fuse with the Earth and send an enormous amount of the Earth out into orbit around the Earth as the moon. And so the moon is comprised of the same material of the Earth. And it is illuminated as a result of reflecting the sun's light. Boy, it's been gorgeous these last few mornings as you see full moon in the pre-dawn hours. Even as the sun begins to rise, in the west, the moon is just brilliant. And I think it's Saturn that's been dangling below it all of this time. It's just a marvelous sight. So we're actually seeing a full moon during the early daylight hours too, as we approach this conclusion of time. So these two, the sun and the moon, they serve as metaphors to portray the proper perspective to view all that God has fulfilled through the Moedim. By describing him as the second most important luminary compared to his father, but the greater luminary compared to other men and to myself as the lesser luminary, God is conveying to us that Dowd's arrivals are important markers in time, and that by using the sun to mark years and the moon to mark months, we know the timing not only of the fulfillment of the Moedim as the 14th, 15th, and 16th day of the first month, as 7 sevens or 49 days from the heart of Matzah to Shabuah, and then the Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah on the first day of the 7th month, the 10th and the 15th day of that month. These are all times that are associated with our place in the Earth's orbit around the sun and the phases of the moon. So they are markers of the Moedim, and they are the very men that fulfill them. So the 7 Moedim are fulfilled through them. And we are enlightened as a result of them. And it was in the fullness of the moon's light also that Dowd fulfilled Pesach and Matzah. It's always a full moon during Pesach and Matzah. It's always a full moon when we return on Sukkah to the garden. It is interesting that when Dowd fulfilled Pesach and Matzah in 33 CE, there was a full lunar eclipse. When Yahweh brings us back into the garden on Sukkah in 2033, on October 7th, there will be a full lunar eclipse. On the day of Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim in 33 CE that sets up this final year, there will be a full lunar eclipse. And on Teruah, which is when the lesser luminary, as the moon, serves his king by laying down his Bashar body, his life as the Adamah Parah, as man from Edom, to save this mortal remnant of Israel, there will be a full solar eclipse. It's the one time, only one time, where the moon is actually placed in a position that's more important than the sun, just for that day. And that's the day that Yada, as the king's herald, lays down his life as the man from Edom and the Adamah Parah. It's a pretty interesting story, the way it's all woven together, isn't it? Also that we can be part of Yahweh's family. So, well, Dowd is Yahweh's most enduring and reliable witness. He has a herald, a Bashar. Bashar, of course, is also synonymous with body, and it was his body that was it fulfilled Pesach, and it is my body that will fulfill Teruah. But the primary meaning of the word is derived from its verbal root, which is to be a herald, to convey information that's important. And ed means restoring a witness. That's why it's the moed, to ponder the implications of the restoring witness to the eternal testimony. These are the roles that we play together. It is why the lesser luminary is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It is why when the Choder is presented, that he is shown as a branch. He is called an observant branch, a netzar. It is said of him that he has roots. It is said that he is parah, fruitful. Adamah parah, that he is fruitful. And it says that he has the spirit of both Etzah, which is the counsel of that tree, and Diath, of the 7 spirits. Diath is the 6th. It is the Etzah of Dieth, the tree of knowledge, about the tree of lives. This is God's message. It's powerful. It's irrefutable. It's infinitely superior to the lie of Jesus or of Allah or of Hashem. It destroys the religions of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, and it replaces them with the most profoundly important, most beautiful, most enlightening and uplifting message that God has ever offered those who would listen and capitalize on what Father and Son have achieved. So I thank you for listening. I hope it has been a beautiful day as we've tried to capture so much of the elegance and light, these long shadows in this late afternoon over our beautiful garden of an island and the shimmering sea behind. May you have a wonderful rest of your day.